And thank you so much for joining me. I'm Julie Phillip. This week, city police have been arresting dozens of Occupy Rochester protesters as they were attempting to spend the night in Washington Square Park. The group has been demanding City Hall drop those charges as they continue working on plans to keep the protest going. I've invited two members of Occupy Rochester to our studio to talk about their efforts. Welcome, Michael Steinberg and Clements. Thank you both for coming in today.
Thank you.
Thanks. I want to start with a question about your personal stories. Give a little bit of your background and how you got involved in this protest. I'll start with you, Holly.
I've been active in this kind of stuff for since college for several years now, and I was fortunate to actually be able to go down to Zuccotti Park a couple of times, and the day we were on the Brooklyn Bridge, and one of the big days that they had a big march with all the different labor groups and community groups, and I was fortunate to be down there, and I kind of caught the Occupy bug, I guess, and so I spent some time down there, and I got to spend some time with Occupy Buffalo a couple weeks ago as well, and so now I was here, and when it started to take off in Occupy Rochester, I jumped right in and I think I'm definitely one of the most enthusiastic people.
You look pretty enthusiastic. What about the message resonates with you?
Oh, what about the message? I mean, it's obviously very important that we're out there and that people feel, that they're not alone in their frustration. For me, I think it's important that we have this movement, we have this energy right now, and that we're galvanizing people who have sat at home and just sort of taken it for so many years, and I think it's great for people to know that they're not alone, and being frustrated with the two-party system, or being frustrated with politicians that don't represent us, or the economy.
So it's sort of a frustration that got you involved in this and other protests with the status quo.
Personally, yeah. I mean, personally for me, it's been, it's being frustrated and just feeling like there isn't anyone who's really working for the interests of the 99% or representing me. And I know that I'm not alone in that, and that's, what I see that's so important about this.
Okay, how about you? What prompted you to get off the couch, so to speak?
Well, I had student activist days too, but as you could probably tell, there were a few decades before Holly's.
I couldn't tell, but thanks for sharing.
And I think as somebody who was really involved in the anti-Vietnam War movement and some other things, as I sort of was at the time, watching the sense of alternatives close down through the 70s, 80s, 90s, the period when this Margaret Thatcher famously said there is no alternative. I began to look in my own research, I'm an independent scholar as well as a lawyer, at some of the deeper roots of the kind of powerlessness that people, I think, increasingly feel. And one of the extraordinary things about the Occupy movement, and I think it's clear if you're there for the General Assemblies or any of the larger groups, is the sense of possibility, a very joyful sense that we do indeed, as human beings working together, have the ability to make a different and better world. And that sense of possibility has been absent a lot. It's been almost disappeared.
So you're feeling some hope with this.
Yes.
Now, it's a pretty simple message, income inequality at 99%, but the solutions are not there. They're not right up there. You can't make a list of things that would fix that. How does that play into this? Does that make it difficult?
Well, to me, I think Holly would love to talk to the income inequality angle, and I think that's very important. But again, I think the sense of a community building itself and organizing itself to begin to explore what things we have in common, what kind of life we share, what kind of life we can build together, goes far beyond simple questions of economics or politics.
So you're not actually trying to look for the solution to the 99% problem. You're looking for alternatives, thoughtful alternatives to the current systems.
I think that's one way to put it. I mean, the solutions, having seen solutions come and go, my own feeling is that it is the growth of local networks, of people beginning to understand how they can work together to provide the basis for their lives, that is going to could come from this. That possibility is opening. There's a sign everybody loves from Zuccotti Park that says, "The beginning is near." And what excites me about the Occupy movement is that sense of beginning. It's not so much the issue focus, although certainly the issues bring home to people the desperate need for that.
Do you want to weigh in on that?
Absolutely. I've heard that criticism a lot, and that there's not a specific.
Yeah, people say, well, they can't come up and walk in and say, "This is what we need. This is what we want."
But I really don't even agree with that. I think that there are demands. I think it's been clear that the corporate control of politics, unregulated corporate greed. The very same people who broke our economy in 2008 and have done nothing to try to get us right back on the right track, and if anything, have lobbied to continue the same down the same path that got us there. And I think that those things are, they're pretty evident in that the solutions, the legislation that would actually address those things, those are on the table. They've been on the table. What the problem is that we don't have enough of a popular movement, enough.
These are pretty complex issues, and people are busy and they're not looking into them. Is that part of the problem? Some of the solutions, or are they?
Partially. I mean, they're not. There's a lot of things that aren't that complicated. That like the extension of the millionaires tax that expires in New York State at the end of the year. That's not a complicated thing. There's no reason to be giving a tax break to the wealthiest percentage of New Yorkers right now. But so it's not that people aren't aware of it, and there's overwhelming support for that. 3/4 of the population supports it. So the legislation is there. What we don't have are politicians who are willing to work on it and represent the people who the 99% of people who actually need their representatives to be working on this stuff. So it's there. The list of demands are there. And what we have now is, and what I think is shaking people up a little bit about it, is what we have is a popular movement of awakening of the hearts and minds of people who have had enough. I mean, they've just had enough, and they're looking for a new solution and a new route to change.
In both of your answers and just looking at both of you, there's diversity right here in this room. How diverse is the Rochester group?
I'll take it, and I'm sure Michael has something to say as well. As diverse as you can imagine, and that's honestly, and I've seen that across. I've been following this movement very closely, and I've gotten to experience some of it firsthand too. And it is as diverse as you can imagine, and that's obviously one of the best things about it. And it crosses political lines, it crosses religious lines, it crosses class lines, it crosses race lines. It's swept across the country, it's swept across the world. I mean, this is universal.
Are you surprised at how diverse it is, and how organized is it? And I'm speaking particularly here in Rochester, but also how you connect with the other groups.
I'm actually very pleased. Of course, it's generational lines as well, and it's really exciting to see the people that I've seen from Rochester protests. I tend to be one of the youngest people there, it seems, and now I'm no longer. Now I see people who have been in Rochester politics a long time and people who've just come in. Everything is very loose-limbed, and the movement seems to have embraced the principle of horizontalism, the leaderlessness in which decisions emerge through consensus, and that appeals to me, and by the way, I certainly agree with Holly on the issues. I mean, there are obvious demands. If I can just sort of backtrack for a moment.
You were giving me big picture thinking. That's okay.
When you look at the tax rates now and the tax rates in the 1950s, we tax wealthy people at a much lower rate than we did in the 1950s or the 60s or 70s.
So you feel there's some pretty solid specific
It's almost a no-brainer in a way. I think in those kinds of demands, I think Holly is right. Yeah. There ought not to be any need to state those, because anybody who isn't blinded by market ideology would say, well, of course. One of the reasons inequality is going up is because the entire system has been changed to support the very wealthy.
And the corporations. Let's talk a little bit about the nitty-gritty, the activities you're doing, what's being planned, and how long you think you'll be hanging out there protesting.
There's a lot going on, and this is for Occupy Rochester. We're entering, what do you think, our 4th or 5th week now? I'm not quite sure, but we've done. there's something that's definitely there is that it's continuing to grow, and that we've gotten more community alliances, organizations that have come out in support of us, that are showing up, supporting us with the material things we need, the food, the blankets, the hand warmers, whatever it is. They're there with us, and one of the things that I like best is that every time that I'm there, it's a rotating group of faces. It isn't the same 20 or the same 50 people that I'm seeing out there every day, but every time there's somebody new to meet. There's someone who stepped into a leadership role who I didn't know 3 days ago, and that's really one of the most exciting things, and it's definitely moving our momentum forward for sure.
Mm-hmm. How long do you think you'll be out there? How long are you prepared to be out there?
I'm not one of the people who can do that. It's going to be up to them, and it's going to be up to the police, and I suspect it's going to be up to the courts. But there is more than just the occupation. I think the occupation is a focus, a very important space, but we're beginning to put together a program of teach-ins, perhaps films as well, and I hope that we'll be able to take some of that on the road to begin a dialogue about this with people who may not be willing even to come downtown, let alone sit in the cold. This is the start of something. Occupy Wall Street has really been showing us new ways of bringing people together and organizing around really deep things as well as issues. And we're just discovering what it means. And the consensus process, which seems so tedious sometimes, with people holding up diamonds and twinkling, and all of that is essential in that. It lays the path down as we are laying the path down as we walk.
All right. We are out of time, but thank you both so much for coming in off the streets to talk to me today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that's Michael Steinberg and Holly Clements, two members of Occupy Rochester.